Hi, welcome everybody. My name's Austin and today we're going to be making some drinks. So since we've all been cooped up during quarantine, a lot of things have kind of come out of everyone's extra time on the internet, one of which, as I'm sure you've seen, is whipped coffee. The idea is you take some instant coffee, some sugar, and some water, and with those three ingredients you're able to whip it up into this really nice kind of frothy foam. And I think traditionally you serve it over a glass of milk or creamer of some sort with some ice. And while it's fantastic by itself, especially if you like coffee, I highly recommend it, I tried it and I thought that would go good in a drink. And so that's what we're going to be making today, is a whipped coffee cocktail. We're going to go from scratch, we're going to make the whipped coffee, and I'll show you kind of how we incorporate it into a drink. So before we get started, it's really important whenever you're working with food or drink to make sure you wash your hands, especially during this time. Okay, so before we start, what you want to do is you want to go and you want to make an actual cup of coffee. I've made one before the video and I put it into this little pour jar just so I don't make a mess later on, but you can make coffee however you want as long as it's a nice strong coffee. I like to use the instant coffee just because we're already using it, so you might as well stick with what you got. I've used a tablespoon of this with some, I use a glass of hot milk, and the reason I use milk is that way the cup of coffee ends up being a little thicker and a little creamier, which I think works really well for this cocktail, but obviously if you have any sort of allergies to that, or if you just don't like that, then you can obviously use water, or you can make it with almond milk, or whatever you want to make it with. But you only going to need about 3 ounces of it, but you can make a full cup just so it's not too strong or too weak. And that is what we will use later. So I've made that, and I'm just going to let this sit over to the side because you don't want that to be boiling hot when you make your cocktail. Our next step in terms of preparation is you're going to take your rocks glass, which is the glass you're going to use for this final cocktail, and you're just going to take some ice, which I have here, and you're just going to let a few cubes sit into the glass. And what that's going to do is it's just going to cool it down while we make everything else and give us a nice chilly glass. You can also take the glass and put it in the freezer if you want, if you're doing this inside and you have access to that. I'm obviously outside, so I'm just going to be using some ice. So on to our whipped coffee recipe. So the recipe is really simple. All you need is 2 tablespoons of instant coffee, sugar, and water. I've got my water here, my little bit. And it won't look like much when you're putting it in there, but trust me, it does yield a good amount. For this cocktail, you really only need 1 tablespoon of each, but we're going to put 2 in here to stick with the original recipe. So 2 tablespoons of instant coffee, 2 tablespoons of sugar, and 2 tablespoons of warm water. It doesn't have to be boiling or anything, but it should be warm at least to activate the instant coffee. There's 1, and there's 2. Okay, and that's all that we need for the whipped coffee. You then want to get a whisk of some sort. I have an electric one here, and you just want to start whisking it up, and you'll know when it's done. It gets really frothy and kind of cream colored as well. So now we whipped our coffee. You can tell when it's done when it becomes this kind of light cream color here, and also if you scoop it with a spoon, it becomes kind of this fresh whipped cream as far as texture goes. So that's our whipped coffee for now. So we'll stick it over to the side, and now we're going to move on to the drink portion. So what you're going to need for this is you're going to take your stirring glass of some sort. I'm just using a cocktail stirring glass here. If you don't have one, that's fine. Anything that you can really stir in will be okay. And it does help if you use a stirring glass, because we're going to essentially take the drink we make in here and transfer it over later into our actual rocks glass. And the reason being is when you do that, anything that you stir or mix in here, it'll dilute with some of the ice we're going to put in, and then you strain it out so you don't get any of that dilution when you put it into a glass full of other ice as well. So we're going to take our stirring glass and we are going to start making our drink. So what we're going to do is, into our stirring glass, we're going to start with our main liquor, which in this case is going to be rye whiskey. I've tried this cocktail with some other liquors, or at least some other types of whiskey, and I think rye really works the best for this, and really kind of for any cocktails in my opinion, just because rye has a nice, kind of sharp flavor to it, and it's not that sugary, unlike bourbon, which is kind of a sweeter, more sugar-heavy whiskey. So when you add stuff to rye, you're not just overloading the sugar content, you're actually able to taste the whiskey flavor come through, and you're able to dilute the alcoholness, but you're still able to taste the flavor of the actual whiskey. So that's why I've chosen rye whiskey for this, and we're going to start with 1.5 ounces of rye whiskey, right in there, which is about a shot. So if you don't have a specific measuring glass, you can use a shot glass. Generally, a U.S. shot is about 1.5 ounces. So we're going to start with that, our 1.5 ounces of whiskey. Then we're going to take some Irish cream of some sort, Bailey's or Carol Ann's, or really whatever you have in the house. And we're also going to put 1.5 ounces, the same amount, right in there. Good. Next, we're going to take our coffee that we made earlier, which I've put it into this little pour glass just for ease of use, and we're going to put 3 ounces of this in here. Now, if your coffee is still warm and you are using something like this cocktail jigger, you want to make sure you hold it from the bottom because this will get really hot really quick. So there's 3 ounces, or half. That's 1.5 ounces, and 3 ounces. And again, I made my coffee with milk and the instant coffee. You can make it however you like. You can use a mocha pot if you like. That makes a nice kind of strong dark coffee as well. But really whatever you want. And then we're going to take some cinnamon as well. And that cinnamon we're just going to add a couple dashes in there, depending on how much you like cinnamon. And as far as the drink bit, that's all the ingredients you need. The only thing left is to add some ice in there. That's to really to cool this down and to kind of get everything all mixed together. And the reason that we are using a stirring glass versus a shaker is when you're making cocktails, if you are mixing everything that you're mixing is alcohol based. For us, it's whiskey and Irish cream, and well, the coffee is meh. You just mix that together. If you were mixing something like citrus or something that really wasn't a coffee or an alcohol based, you'd want to shake that. But in our case, we are just going to stir it up. So you put your ice in there, and then with your stir stick or your bar spoon or whatever you have, give it a nice stir. You want to stir for 10, 15, up to 30 seconds really. Just get everything nice and chilled. The stirring also with the ice in there does give it a chill. And the more you stir, the colder this will be. This also applies to like iced tea, fun fact. If you get an iced tea in a restaurant and it's not cold enough, give it a stir with a straw or something, and it will cool down for you. So that's our actual drink portion, the kind of alcoholic cocktail portion. We're going to set that to the side for a second. We're going to come back to the whipped coffee actually. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to take a little bit of Irish cream and we're going to add it into this whipped coffee. I find that about 3/4 ounce for this amount is fine. You don't want to add too much. Just enough to add a little bit of the flavor in there. And also what this is going to do is it's going to make it a little bit less thick. It's going to become a little more like the head of a dark beer. So go ahead and whip that up. Doesn't take long, as you can see, just enough to stir it in there. And then now, if you see, if we take it, it's a little bit more, it's less thick, it's less foamy, a little more like cream. So, now what we're going to do is we're going to take our rock glass. This is when we're going to combine the two here. And you're going to take that ice that you've been letting your glass chill with, and you're just going to toss it out there. We don't want it anymore. We just want the glass at this point. And you're going to take some new ice, fresh ice out of your ice bucket or your freezer. And this, if you have cocktail ice, if you have the big cubes, go ahead and use that for this. I don't, oddly enough. I used to have a maker for it, but it has since disappeared on me. And now what we're going to do is we're going to strain our drink from our mixing glass. I have a julep strainer here. Again, if you don't have the actual cocktail making bits, that's fine. Just, you know, something to strain out so you don't get all the ice chunks. And you're going to strain that right into your glass with your ice in there. And it should get you pretty close to the top. That's about it there. And what we're going to do now is for our combination, we are going to take our whipped coffee that we've extra whipped with Irish cream, and we're going to top our cocktail with this concoction. Make sure you give yourself a nice chunk. And it's okay if it kind of spills over the side here. We're having fun. And there you go. To finish this off, you obviously, for every cocktail, have to have a garnish. So we're going to take our cinnamon, just give it another extra little dash. And we're going to take a few coffee beans as well. Kind of put those off to the side there. And there you go. There you have it. That is our whipped coffee cocktail. Well, there you have it, guys. That is our whipped coffee cocktail. I hope you guys enjoy, and cheers. There's more. There's one more thing I want to show you guys with the whipped coffee as far as making drinks go. This one's less of a cocktail and more of just a fun drink idea, but I figured since we had everything out, we'd throw it in there. So what you want to do with this is take your whipped coffee that you just had with the cream in it, and it might have settled a little bit, and what's good about whipped coffee is you can just kind of re-whip it and it will come back to life. So let's do that real quick. Okay, so now that we've re-whipped our coffee, what we're going to do is we're actually going to take a Guinness and a pint glass. And that's really all you need is the whipped coffee, the Guinness, and a pint glass. If you can get the Guinness in a can, that is the preferred option. It has the nitrogen ball in there, and it gets you not only a better pour, but I think it tastes a little more like real Guinness from Ireland as well. So we're going to pop this can. A little trick for pouring Guinness into a glass is if you take the can and just invert it 180 and keep it about a half inch to about a half inch above the fill line, and just keep going up with it, you will actually get a proper full Guinness pour. And don't depending on the pint glass you have, if you have a full pint glass, you can just go straight up to the top and it'll get you that proper pour. And you can see right here that it is. You can see the head is on top here, and it's you get the tanness here, and it's percolating just like a proper pint should be poured for Guinness. So we're gonna let this settle for a minute, and once it gets completely black, then we'll be ready to move on. Okay, so now that our Guinness has fully settled, what we're actually gonna do is we're gonna take another bowl that we have here, and we're actually going to scoop the head off of this Guinness, which I know is a bit sacrilegious, but don't worry, we're going to, you probably already guessed, we're going to replace the head with the whipped coffee. It can get a little messy, that's fine. You just want to get the majority of the foam off there. Or if you have a big enough glass, you could leave the head on and you could just add the coffee to it. Get that down there. Take our spoon from earlier. And I got this idea because the consistency that you get from adding the Irish cream to the whipped coffee is very similar to a Guinness head, and a lot of the flavor profiles are the same anyway, so I figured it'd be fun to try. And again, you're going to want a hearty scoop here, a couple hearty scoops. This is the same batch as earlier as well, the one that we made our cocktail with, and now also our Guinness drink as well. So the recipe does give you a lot of whipped coffee to work with, depending on how much you put in each drink. Let me try and get it nice and evenly distributed there. And there you go. Just another fun little thing you can do with your whipped coffee, and obviously who doesn't like having a good pint of Guinness. Okay guys, that's actually it this time. Until next time, cheers.